Hey everyone, it's Karnak, Star Wars Armada Explained. It's your buddy, it's your pal. We're going to look at another Squadron video today. We are going to be looking at the Rebel Squadron, the Scurrg H-9 bomber. So the Scurrg, or H-6 bomber, excuse me. So the Scurrg is not something you see a whole lot on the table. Why is that? We're going to kind of touch on a few points, but let's dive right into the Squadron card. So the generic Scurrg Squadron, what we call a generic squadron, you can see there you can bring as many of them as you have squadron points for, which in a standard 400-point game, you can bring up to 134 points of squadrons. So the Scurrg, bottom left-hand corner is its icon. Opposite of that is its point cost, which is 16 points. And then we'll get up to the 4 boxes there under its name. Going from left to right, you'll see that the yellow box represents how far it can move. It can move within distance 3. The next box is it has 6 hit points. The one after that is its anti-squadron armament of 2 blue die, so not very good at dogfighting. And the next box after that is its anti-ship armament, which is a single blue die and a single black die for 2 dice. So very good at bombing ships, just like it says, bomber. So it comes with 3 keywords. It comes with the bomber, grit, and heavy keywords. What does this mean? So the bomber keyword, so typically squadrons, when they attack an armada, they only deal damage if a normal hit icon is showing. If they're showing critical icons, they don't deal damage, except with the bomber keyword here. The bomber keyword does say that, hey, these critical icons when you're attacking ships adds 1 damage. So not only now is it just the hit symbols, the crit symbols also means they can deal damage, which you can see there for the Scurrg with the blue die and black die, a potential maximum damage output of 3 damage in a single attack, which, ouch. And they're also able to resolve critical effects, like the standard critical effect, or if there's some other card effect or ability that's giving them a chance to resolve a different kind of critical effect. Bombers can do so. The next keyword is the keyword grit. You are not prevented from moving while you're engaged by only 1 squadron. So, for example, if this Scurrg was only engaged by a single TIE fighter or enemy squadron that's not heavy, because remember, if a squadron is heavy, it doesn't stop a squadron from attacking ships or running away from it. But if the Scurrg was engaged by this TIE fighter, and there's no obstruction and there is clear engagement, the Scurrg can say, hey, there's only 1 of you, I don't care, I'm going to run away. Not a problem. But if this TIE fighter says, hey, I brought a friend, and they're both engaged with the Scurrg, well, now the Scurrg is locked into place. Which brings me to the 3rd keyword of the Scurrg also has the heavy keyword, which means if these TIE fighters for any reason said, you know what, we don't want to hang around you, we're going to run away too, the TIE fighters can bounce right on out. The Scurrg can't stop them from doing that. Or, for example, say that there was a capital ship here, they don't have to attack the Scurrg unless, some other card effect like Advanced Transponder Net is in play. Otherwise, those TIE fighters can just attack the ship and they don't have to attack the Scurrg. Okay, so that is the Scurrg, the 3 keywords. So 16 points, and some people, typically, why don't you see them? Well, you kind of can bring B-Wings. That's the biggest thing. So B-Wings, you might look at that and be like, oh, but they're only speed 2 and they only have 5 hull. Well, they're 2 points cheaper. They're still bomber. They still have the same damage output, but they're better in a dogfight with 3 blue die. So if you do get tangled up, they're going to be a little bit more effective. And with only 1 less health, that's not really a huge detriment. So why do you see more B-Wings over Scurrgs? You might think, oh, the Scurrg flies faster. Well, Rebels have a lot more options to kind of help push B-Wings where they need to go. And that's, if you look at the B-Wing speed limitation of speed 2 as, oh, that's a reason not to bring them, you're not trying to play to the B-Wing strengths. And there definitely are cases to be made of, bring Scurrgs because you need that extra speed and maybe you don't want to spend time or resources to try to help those B-Wings move faster otherwise. But you try to find that when you're building your squadron balls, every point kind of counts in maximizing the potential of whatever you're trying to go for. So that's kind of why you don't see Scurrgs very much. And also, Scurrgs just can't dogfight. With 2 blue anti-squadron, once they get tied up and locked down, that's kind of it for him, unless you're bringing intel. But then, unless you're also then bringing escort for that intel, and then you just kind of get into this feedback loop of you want this for this for this, and you're kind of, playing against yourself and trying to find that balance. And then at the end of the day, it's like, I can just bring these 3 other squadrons for the same effect and not have to worry about it. And that's not to say that I haven't seen Scurrgs on the table and people use them effectively. You, like with everything, you got to have a plan, and you really have to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish with them. All right, that's Scurrgs. Nothing crazy going on there. Let's talk about this bad boy Nim. We're going to talk about Nim here. So Nim flies the Havoc. So Nim is a unique character. You can only ever have one Nim in your fleet. He costs 21 points, and he has 2 braces for defense tokens. He flies speed 3 against 6 hull, 2 blue anti-squadron, again still the single blue, single black anti-ship. He's got bomber, and he has grit. He doesn't have heavy anymore, which is great, because in a pinch, if you need him to tie up some enemy fighters, you can do that. Why are you bringing him? What's his special ability? It's a doozy. His blue critical symbol, if the defender is a ship, you may choose and discard one of its defense tokens. So what's the timing of this, and how does this work? Because again, I see some players potentially misplay this or not understand timings. So let's say there's a Star Destroyer here. It's pretty healthy. It's like, hey, I have no fear, but for some reason, I'm at, we'll say it's speed 1. I'm going for supercell. So the Nim flies up and says, hey, I'm going to shoot you. Pop out the die box here. So we roll the single blue and we roll the single black. And in this situation, it's like, I only did 1 damage and I didn't have Nim's special ability. So I'm going to fix the dice here. I have that capability. Let's change that blue to that blue critical we want. And, for kicks and giggles, we'll set that to the hit crit. Now, if you roll this right off the bat, now this is where you can start mind playing with your opponent, right? So it's like, if you have this ISD has his brace, and this is like the first attack, it's like, so Nim will be able to discard a defense token if that blue critical symbol is still showing in the resolve damage step. Because remember, critical effects are resolved after the defender spends defense tokens. Some people mistakenly, they roll that blue hit crit and then they say, oh, I immediately discard your brace defense token, and a new player will go, oh, okay, and they toss it, and that's not how the steps resolve. So remember, the attacker rolls their attack pool, they say, okay, I'm done. Then it goes to the spend defense token step, where the defender still has a chance to spend defense tokens or use some other card effects or abilities potentially to either cancel that blue die or re-roll that die, or otherwise maybe try to get rid of it, etc. So you don't immediately resolve Nim's ability, because again, that is done in the step after the spend defense token step, which is the resolve damage step. The very first thing you do in resolve damage step is resolve a critical effect if able. In this case, if the defender, for example, chooses not to spend any defense tokens or do anything otherwise, and we reach the resolve damage step as Nim, I have the blue critical icon shown. I say, I'm going to use his special ability to resolve that card effect, and I'm going to discard your brace defense token. And then it's gone. It's gone forever. You don't get that back. Unless, of course, other commander card effects, abilities, etc. So again, to restate about how a typical interaction works, let's say Nim does fly up to this totally healthy ISD. He rolls that die pool. The Star Destroyer is going to go, you know what? I know I'm going to lose my brace, so I'm going to go ahead and brace this attack from 3 damage, because remember the crit and hit symbols count as damage, so 3 damage, brace to 2 damage, and now Nim can say, okay, and the defender says, all right, I'm done. Now you can resolve your critical, and Nim's going to say, well, even though you discarded, or even though you spent your brace token, I want to make sure you don't get another use of that in the future. So yeah, go ahead and discard that defense token you spent, the brace. So boom, it's gone. Or if you get into a case where like Nim is attacking like a Super Star Destroyer, and he rolls this because the Super Star Destroyer has the 2 braces, well, it doesn't matter which one that Super Star Destroyer decides to spend or not spend. Nim can just pick one up, chuck it away, and you'll make Super Star Destroyer players very, very sad. or just in general if they have a defense token that want them to just get rid of in general. Nim is good for 21 points. Again, sucks in a dogfight, can't dogfight to save his life, but if you can get him 2 capital ships and on target for capital ships, oh man, he just rips them apart. So he's really good for getting rid of those pesky Imperial defense tokens, especially when those defense tokens, are usually backed up by something like ECM or something like that. So Nim, pretty good, pretty fantastical. I always dread seeing him on table, and if I don't have a plan to be able to deal with him, he just kind of does what he wants and makes my life sad. Okay, let's talk about the new squadron that came in Rebellion of the Rim. Once Vassal gets done resetting things here. Come on, Vassal. There we go. So I'm gonna butcher this name because Star Wars names, as we know, I'm awful at. Marlee Hura, I think that's how you say her name. So Marlee. So Marlee is a unique squadron. You can only have 1 Marlee in your fleet. Double brace. Marlee costs 26 points. 26 points, and it's debatable if the squadron should be worth that much. It has almost all the same stats. The anti-squadron armament is 1 red, 1 blue, and its anti-ship armament is only 2 blue die. So even though it's not a black die for its anti-ship, 2 blue is still really good. It still makes her a decent bomber. And her anti-squadron armament is now somehow worse. I mean, that red... so reds typically for squadrons and anti-squadron. So there's only 3 sides on an 8-sided die that will deal damage, and of course on a blue there's 4 sides, and then there's chance for accuracies, which are helpful. So losing a reliable blue for a more unreliable red, not a really good trade, especially with the point increase. Why are you bringing Marlee? So also has bomber, also has grit. This is Marlee's card effect. It reads, once per activation, while a friendly ship is attacking a ship at distance 1 of you being Marlee Squadron, and you are engaged by 1 or fewer squadrons, the attacker may spend 1 die to change 1 die to a face with a critical icon. So in effect, Marlee is like a mini Screed, in that Screed is, commander that affects all ships, while Marlee can only affect ships that are at distance 1 of Marlee. So how does this work? We'll say Marlee is at distance 1 of the Star Destroyer here. Let's say we've got 2 hammerheads at long range here. So we'll say 1 hammerhead shoots the Star Destroyer. We're going to say it's the scout version, so there's 2 red die. So we roll the 2 red. All right. And we'll say that it had a Confire dial. So we had the Confire, and now let's say that this one was a blank. Or that's an accuracy, and that was a blank. So you're like, oh man, I'm only dealing 1 damage. Well, that's not as good as what I would prefer to hope for. Once per activation, which is that, the activation of that ship, I can spend a die to change a die. So I'm going to spend this accuracy to change this to a critical symbol. Boom. So that is, again, for only 1 of the attacks the Hammerhead can make, and it can only be against ships. So if I was like double arced with the Star Destroyer here, again, only 1 of those attacks I can make that die correction with. So that is what Marlee can do. So how helpful is that in most situations? Not really. Where you kind of will see Marlee be used with is with Sato a lot, because Sato can exchange other types of die with black die with critical effects, and that can get a lot better. Otherwise, if you're also just trying to bring along some guaranteed dice fixing and you don't want to spend other points for that dice fixing elsewhere, you can kind of get some mileage out of that. But for 26 points, really expensive, and she can't dogfight, and she's an okay bomber, not a fantastic bomber, and it's hard to justify Marlee in a lot of situations. One thing I do want to point out, make sure I don't forget. Oh, right. To back up one thing about Nim before I forget. So remember, Nim's effect is a critical effect, meaning that if you have cards that can stop things from resolving critical effects like Damage Control Officer or Commander Geralt, those will stop critical effects. Okay, back to melee. All right. So melee, you can also use melee's effect when a friendly squadron, or excuse me, when a friendly ship is attacking and it is using the salvo defense token. So let's say that somehow a hammerhead could salvo. They can't, just so you know. They can't, because you can only use rear printed die armament. Hammerheads don't have any. But let's just say in the situation that this hammerhead shot with that die pool against that Star Destroyer, used melee's ability, then it moved forward. And now the Star Destroyer is shooting the hammerhead, and after the Star Destroyer's attacks resolve, the hammerhead, if it has salvo, could salvo. It would use the dice that it has, and if it had the ability to roll 2 dice in that salvo attack, melee's ability is just restricted to an activation. It doesn't have to be that ship's activation. So you could cancel that die and set that to a crit symbol. And it works exactly the same way how Scurrg works. Scurrg also works exactly in this manner. That's per FAQ. Again, it's once per activation. It doesn't matter if it's that ship's activation, if it's your opponent's ship's activation, if it's a squadron's activation. That's kind of how the ability works. But again, it only works against enemy ships. All right. Let's talk about how does melee work with Instigator around. So Instigator in a nutshell is if you're at distance 1 of Instigator, your squadron is treated as if you're engaged by 2 additional squadrons. So one thing I haven't touched on is the limiter on melee's ability, is that if you are engaged by enemy squadrons, you are not able to resolve melee's effect. If you're only engaged by 1 enemy squadron, you're totally fine. Because again, melee's card says if you're engaged by 1 or fewer, as in 1 squadron or 0 squadrons, you as the attacker can still resolve a card effect. But as soon as melee is engaged by 2 enemy squadrons, melee's ability is completely locked out. You're not able to utilize melee's ability at all, period, end of story. So then how does that coming back around to Instigator? How does that work? Well, Instigator is treating that squadron as engaged by 2 enemy squadrons. So melee, even if there are technically no other enemy squadrons around her, if she's at distance 1 of Instigator, melee is engaged by these 2 squadrons that Instigator generates, in effect, and melee is not able to use the card effect that she has. So again, another limiter on melee is the fact that her ability can also get locked out by squadrons. Now, what some players will do is that they'll try to hide her on obstacles where obviously you can't cause any engagement and melee can do her thing. And that is, in a nutshell, that's the Scurrg bombers. There's nothing else crazy or anything going on here. So again, we covered the Scurrg, we covered Nim. How his ability resolves there. He can discard a defense token in the resolve damage step, which is after the spend defense token step. If the defender has the ability to stop that critical effect with damage control officer or Commander Geralt, they can. And melee can, once per activation, when a friendly ship is attacking an enemy ship and that enemy ship is at distance 1 of melee, you can spend 1 die to change a die to a face of a critical icon. That icon, by the way, can be a hit crit symbol. It doesn't have to be a single crit icon. Again, melee's ability can also be used when a ship is salvoing. And melee, if it's at distance 1 of Instigator, melee is not able to utilize melee's ability because it's being engaged by enemy squads. Okay, I think I covered everything. That's it. So, of course, if you guys have any questions or if I missed something, please be sure to post, point it out to me, let me know. I'm happy to answer your questions. You guys are fantastic, and I'll catch you all next time.